For most of cybersecurity's history, the worst thing that can happen to a CISO after a bad breach was getting fired. That's not exactly true anymore. Today, a CISO can face something that used to sound like an exaggeration, real personal legal liability. And I want to walk you through exactly what changed, what didn't, and why this even matters if you're nowhere near the title yet. So since the SEC's cybersecurity disclosure rules took effect, the entire calculus around this role has shifted. And whether you're already in cybersecurity leadership or you're building toward it, understanding what exactly changed here is genuinely important because it tells you what the job is turning into. So let's start with the rule itself. The SEC's final rule on cybersecurity disclosure, adopted back in 2023, requires public companies to disclose a cybersecurity incident within 4 business days of determining that incident is material to the company's financial performance. And here's the part that people miss. The materiality determination itself has to happen without unreasonable delay, the moment an incident is discovered. Sounds simple on paper. In practice, this puts the CISO right at the center of a generally brutal sprint, coordinating with legal, with finance, with investor relations, often with outside forensic experts, to figure out scope, assess financial materiality, and produce disclosure language that's accurate without being alarmist and without being misleading, all within days, often while the incident is still actively being contained. Now here's where it gets interesting, and where a lot of people's understanding is actually a year or two out of date. The case everyone points to is the SEC's 2023 enforcement action against SolarWinds and their CISOs individually. That was the first time a sitting CISO got named personally in an SEC cybersecurity enforcement action. It sent a shockwave through the entire cybersecurity leadership community. A lot of CISOs went out and got their own personal liability insurance because of that case alone. But here's what a lot of people haven't caught up on. The SEC actually dismissed that case in late 2025. And under new agency leadership, they've signaled they're going to focus cybersecurity enforcement specifically on affirmation, misrepresentation, and deliberate concealment, not on good faith judgment calls about when exactly an incident became material. That's a real meaningful narrowing. And I want to be clear, this doesn't mean CISO liability just disappeared. It means the standard is shifting toward something like this. Did you know something was materially wrong and say otherwise? That's the real exposure. Not did you make a defensible but ultimately incorrect timing call under genuine pressure. If you're building toward this level of leadership, I want you to actually sit with that distinction because it's the one that matters. The risk isn't in making an imperfect call during a messy, ambiguous incident. The risk is a security posture that gets described in a public filing as stronger than it actually is. CISO liability doesn't exist by itself either. Courts and regulators have increasingly lined up cybersecurity governance with something called the Caremark standard, which is a long-standing fiduciary duty standard for boards. Under that standard, board members themselves can face personal exposure if they fail to implement any real oversight system for cyber risk, or if they consciously ignore the systems that do exist. That's pushed boards to actually take this seriously, adding directors with real security fluency, expecting documented active oversight instead of a once a year 15-minute briefing. And that matters directly for CISOs because it changes who you're actually accountable to. Reporting into a board that's genuinely engaged in cyber governance is a completely different job than reporting into a board that just wants to hear we're fine once a year. So practically, here's what's followed from all of this. Disclosure controls are now real, ongoing discipline, not a document you write once and file away. Public figures have to reflect the actual state of your security program because enforcement attention has specifically gone after language that described controls a company didn't actually have. CISO liability insurance, which used to be rare, has become a real point of negotiation when security leaders take a new role. Alongside D&O coverage that used to only really protect the C-suite and the board, and the CISO's relationship with legal and finance has gotten a lot tighter. A materiality determination isn't purely a technical call anymore, and it isn't purely a legal call either. It's a joint one, made under real-time pressure with real consequences attached to getting it wrong. Here's how I want you to think about all of this. None of this should scare you away from pursuing cybersecurity leadership. What it means is the role has matured into something that looks a lot more like other executive positions that have always carried real accountability. General counsel, CFO, roles where judgment under real scrutiny has always been part of the job description. Security leadership now carries the same weight. And honestly, for a field that spent years arguing it deserved a real seat at the executive table, this, in kind of an uncomfortable way, is exactly what having that seat actually looks like. I wrote a full breakdown of this on a blog this week. Links are in the description if you want the deeper version. If you're in security leadership right now or building toward it, I want to know, has this shift changed how you think about the role? How do you negotiate your own liability protection going into a new position? Drop it in the comments. Subscribe for more of this every week, and I'll see you in the next one.